So one of the things that makes portfolio planning and budgeting difficult is the complex environment within which we have to do it. On one side of we have the business demand that's ever increasing, and in many cases is changing over time within a limited budget. On the side, we've got our IT production capacity, and it's defined by the facilities and technical infrastructure and the people with certain skill mixes. Both of these come together within a dynamic business environment with changing technology and senior leadership's desire for innovation and competitiveness. So we need a scientific way that we can quickly explore demand options and scenarios that will fit within our current capacity limitations and help guide changes to our capacity that will be required to support the business in the future. So, these are some of the challenges that we run into in performing the budgeting exercise and the benefits that the business hopes to gain from it. Budgeting activities are usually a prerequisite to funding new initiatives, and therefore there's a lot of schedule pressure to get it done so things can move forward. We're looking fairly far into the future at a time when we don't have a lot of information that we would like, which introduces uncertainty. And with that uncertainty, we're expected to make binding commitments. Many times there's multiple agendas in our senior leadership that we have to balance, and in many cases there's no quantitative consistent estimation method to support our analysis. And the business is looking for the budgeting exercise to help mitigate risks, optimize our use of resources, and prioritize and schedule work and support sound financial decisions. Developed a 5-step portfolio planning process that we think represents industry best practice. The first step is to establish our analytical processes that support the existing business planning. We'll call this our analysis infrastructure. Because of the early stage that we're doing our analysis and the level of information available to us, we will be using top-down scope-based estimation process to support our analysis. Step 2 is to create scope-based top-down estimates backed up by relevant historical data. In many cases, we may have estimates that are already generated. They may not even be estimates. They may be target or desired values that are coming from the business. When we encounter these situations, then we need to be able to reverse engineer the productivity and staffing assumptions that are implied by those targets and sanity check them. Step 3 is to identify estimates that position outside of our empirical performance domain. These are generally fall into 2 categories: at-risk projects that have optimistic productivity performance assumptions and plans that are wasteful due to productivity assumptions that are too conservative, or research plans that are not optimized. Step 4 is to use the top-down scope-based estimation approach to adjudicate those outliers and bring them in line with the organization's empirical performance domain. And then the last step is to compare the different scenarios, the as-planned portfolio with the adjudicated or optimized portfolio, and then, if needed, any final adjustments can be made to make sure that we stay within our capacity limitations that we have in the organization. So the result of the exercise is provide an empirically based, risk-mitigated budget plan generated in a timely fashion. This information can then be fed into our corporate enterprise project and portfolio management systems. So we'll take these step by step. And step 1 is going to be our infrastructure setup. So the goals of the estimation process is to make it as objective as possible. So this involves designing a fact-based portfolio budgeting decision process. We need to understand some of the demographics around the portfolio we're being asked to support. Ensure we gather relevant historical data to support our analysis. This leads us to the main areas where we need to gather some facts. Scope is one of the key inputs to a top-down scope-based estimation process. Next, we need to generate some historical schedule and effort performance trends. And lastly, we need to configure our skill and resource allocation templates. To do this, we need to gather some data. So generally, 8 to 15 projects are sufficient to give us a handle on where is our existing empirical performance domain. And what we're trying to do is capture, multiple sizing and scope artifacts, if possible, because these can be very useful when we're doing our very early on scoping of the projects that we're budgeting in our portfolio. Since we're going to be talking about a scope-based estimation process as being the pillar that we're going to use for this IT portfolio budgeting, I thought it would be useful to spend a few minutes and talk about scope. I like to start the discussion about size and scope with what scope is not. And a lot of people think of size and scope in terms of effort. And for our context today, we're going to think of size and scope in terms of the capabilities and functionality that need to be defined, designed, built, tested, and delivered to the customer. So it's really the functional content of what we have to build to satisfy the customer's requirements. The metrics that we use to define scope change as a function of time. So here I've got, everybody's fairly familiar with the cone of uncertainty that talks about how much uncertainty there is at different points in the life cycle and how it affects our ability to predict final outcomes. So early on, let's see how I step through this. We're using fairly high-level size metrics. We're usually using analogy-based or what I'll call sort of square footage-based size metrics. That's basically all we have available to us based on the knowledge that we have at those early parts of the life cycle. Later, as we go to a lower level, we can start to bring on more constructible components that we might want to look at, and ultimately, as we get close to the end of the project, the slide to build, we'll get to the actual construction elements that went into building that product that we can measure after the fact. So the idea here is we'd like to capture size metrics for the same system at multiple points along that timeline, and then we can start to develop scaling relationships between them. So early on, maybe we can only do t-shirt sizing, or we can do relative sizing to other systems, but with a little bit of historical data, we can map that into maybe how many function points we might expect, or how many user stories, or maybe ultimately, if we're having to code this thing up, how many lines of code we might have to build and construct to develop those requirements and capabilities. I thought I would put a few sizing resources in the presentation in terms of...
Hi there, I hope you enjoyed that last clip. My name is Michael Maludis, and if you'd like to watch the full 60 minutes of that last webcast, while also gaining complete unlimited access to our entire library of IT learning, simply visit our subscribe page at greatpro.org/subscribe. Unlimited annual access is $199 per year, but if you use the coupon code LEARN2EARN, you can drop that membership fee to just $149. That's less than $13 per month for unlimited access to over 1,000 hours of on-demand career development, covering the entire spectrum of IT management best practices, including business analysis and requirements, software development, quality and testing, risk management, process improvement, project management, and even digital transformation. But your membership doesn't just give you unlimited access to our vast learning library. You also get free access to our mobile app, as well as direct access to our network of over 300 of the world's leading IT consultants, all of whom are dedicated to putting practical knowledge at your fingertips so that you can learn more and earn more. I hope you will join me in becoming a member of the Great IT Professional and advancing your career with us. And if you're on YouTube, don't forget to hit that subscribe button above so that you get notified whenever we publish new free webcasts each week of the year. Thank you for your time and best wishes for your continued success.